This week's episode of Taking Inventory is brought to you by one of our sponsors, Meet Market, your AI assistant for e-commerce marketing. Market isn't just another growth tool, it's a member of your team, helping you keep a pulse on your business and trained to save you time and make you money. It's also co-founded by James Barrow and myself. Visit us at withmarket.com. Now, let's get to the podcast. Ali Kashani is the co-founder and CEO of Serve Robotics. Founded in 2017, Serve Robotics is on a mission to make delivery affordable, sustainable, and convenient. They tout the lowest delivery cost structure thanks to autonomous, durable robots and scalable multi-year contracts. Ali has previously held leadership roles at Uber, Postmates, and is a two-time exiting founder at his previous companies. Ali has a PhD in robotics and computer vision and is a Canada Alexander Graham Bell Scholar with over 20 patents. So Ali, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start by just hearing a little bit more about your journey and what sparked your interest in robotics and ultimately led you to founding Serve Robotics?
I was a teenager growing up in Iran when I got my first Windows PC and heard about Bill Gates' story. And that was quite inspiring. I decided if he brought PCs to the masses, I want to bring robots to the masses. That seemed like a natural progression. I think I was very fortunate with timing. I went on to get my PhD in robotics, started a few companies before finding myself at Postmates solving a really big problem, which is last mile transportation and bringing robots to public spaces.
And in terms of, I guess, just kind of your journey to starting this, I mean, at this point, I think everyone knows about AI, and obviously it's kind of a hot topic, and actually, ironically, in ad tech, it's becoming incredibly important. But have you been surprised by just how fast things have moved, or are you kind of at this point where you're like, it's finally here, like the inevitability has like sort of reached us?
It depends on what time horizon you look. It always seems slower in the short term, and it moves faster than you think it could. I think the Chat GPT stuff was something that a lot of people didn't expect to happen in this time frame. But then you go back and read books by Ray Kurzweil and others, and they actually got the timing pretty good. If you actually go back to some of those predictions about when we are going to reach say the Turing test and that sort of thing. So in some ways it's surprising, and in some other ways it really shouldn't be.
And when you were at Postmates, you started working on some of these big problems, and it sounds like this was one of those problems that you started discussing. And then you were at Uber, and it looks like Serve kind of started in Uber and then spun out. So what was that process going from Postmates, identifying the initial problem, through actual Serve Robotics where it is today?
It's really interesting to start off inside the industry you're trying to disrupt. And one of the things that I'm in a very unique position to see is how insulated some of these industries are from each other, where there are people trying to make these vehicles, and at the same time, they don't seem to be as close to the folks that are going to be using these vehicles. And I'm seeing this gap. When we were inside Postmates, we were looking at this raw data, but also we had such close relationship with merchants and customers. So we really understood what has to be built, how to build it, how to deploy it. You look at the industry right now with AVs, and over $100 billion has been invested just to take the steering out of the car, but retain the form factor of the car. And it turns out that's not going to solve last mile transportation, because where is that car going to park? Like, how are you going to deal with that last 500 feet? And it turns out if you don't solve the last 500 feet, the two stakeholders who are supposed to adopt this, which is the customers and merchants, are not going to adopt this. No one is going to walk 2 blocks to go load a vehicle that's parked in some legal spot, or the other way around, to go grab their food from it. So this was, to me, the most enlightening part, is having access to all those insights. And it's resulted in us building our company in a fairly unique way and putting us in a very fortunate position right now as these robots finally come to life.
And before we get into, I think, like obviously it's an advertising related podcast, but before we get into the advertising kind of opportunities and the formats that you guys are exploring, I think for people that are listening that are in the Los Angeles area, they probably have seen your robots like around town. And I think everyone initially was, it was almost like shock. And then, I think acceptance maybe is like now like the phase that people are in, where it's like you're not taking a picture of it and sending it to 20 of your friends. What's this been like the reception from the public been so far, just given that it is such a unique way to sort of experience an urban environment?
No, it's been extremely positive. There, if you go to the area we operate around Hollywood, you can open Uber Eats right now, order from 300 different restaurants, and one of our robots would bring it to you. And in terms of reception, perhaps one of the easiest ways to demonstrate this is our order volume has been growing 30% month over month on average for more than a year and a half. And we are also one of the most reliable delivery methods on the Uber platform. I think average human delivery completion rate, meaning that they pick up your food. How often do they actually bring it to your door? It's about 98%. Our robots are doing it at like 99.9%. So a whole order of magnitude better. So of course, customers love this. Merchants love this. It's a much better experience for them than what they're used to today. And people on the sidewalks love it. We have so many fun reactions and videos on social media of people who see the robots for the first time. The one popular hashtag is usually "future is now" or "future is here." I actually have a pair of shoes with that written on the side because it's just such a common hashtag.
And I guess just aside from even the Serve, but just hearing the efficiency gains that robots can bring, like, is it fair to assume that almost every industry is going to have that same experience? And I ask in particular just because we're so focused on kind of how AI can impact the advertising world, and we're just seeing now with Meta in particular that they basically have proved that like they are just better at using AI than like even an agency or media buyers themselves. But do you think the efficiency gains that you guys have seen, is that going to be the norm kind of across like most of these industries?
I do. I think, look, robots are just the physical incarnation of AI. It's pretty exciting time to finally see that kind of Jetson vision come to life. But AI is going to have a lot of different applications. Pretty much every part of our life is going to be touched by it. If you think about it, about 100 years ago, we created the combustion engine. Really, what we did there is we scaled our muscles, so we could apply force to our environment at infinite scale effectively. What we're doing now is we're finally scaling our brain. We're scaling intelligence. So it's going to touch every aspect of our lives. Robots are just one of the first that are perhaps more visible. I think a lot of other places have been impacted, but robots are one of the most visible because you suddenly see this cute little shopping cart with personality walking next to you on a sidewalk, and it's one of those moments that you're never going to forget.
And because we are still so early, I think, as James put it, right, we're in that acceptance phase, but still very early, I think, in the life cycle of adoption. And so, as you've seen your orders increase and merchants and delivery companies adopt this technology, consumers adopt the technology, you've started to think about ads as another monetization method.
Mhm.
Is that something you guys are actively exploring, or how have you thought about that, given the fast increase in the core part of your business?
Yeah, actually, it's very fundamental to our story because if you think about last mile transportation traditionally, it's very low margin, a lot of high cost of labor, not a lot of ways to monetize. What's really unique here for us is that not only do we get to use AI and automation to reduce that cost, but we also get to introduce new ways of monetizing every trip. And advertising is the lowest hanging fruit, is the first one. Very robust, 200-year-old industry with OH advertising. So people are used to it. They're looking for eyeballs. And guess what? Our robots are going to be in the busiest parts of town. They get way more eyeballs than a bus or a truck or a billboard. No one posts a picture with a billboard, trust me. With the robots, on the other hand, so it solves a really unique problem. It gets a lot of attention, and for us, the problem is making this into a business that has much better margins, and it really improves the economics of delivery compared to what it is traditionally. I think there's actually a unique future where, based on our models, advertising could be more than enough to pay for that transportation altogether. And I think that opens up some really interesting opportunities. So I'm super excited about it. It looks very tangential and not related to our core business, but when you actually start to pay attention to the numbers, it's actually very core to what we're doing. And for your audience, we're actually hiring someone to lead that effort inside Serve. So if anyone is interested, they should go to our website at serverobotics.com and apply.
Okay. There's definitely someone who's listening to this that I think is probably sick of their job at Snapchat or Meta that should reach out to you.
Would love that.
So if that just resonated, do hit him up. I guess for potential advertisers, can you kind of just explain more about like what does the format look like? Like how do you buy it? Is there, have you guys, like in terms of your phrase, is it self-service? Like how are you guys thinking about kind of the ad product itself?
It's very early days. Interestingly, half of our revenue last year came from advertising, and we have 0 people at the time who were dedicated to this product, basically. So that tells you what kind of demand we were seeing. So it made a lot of sense for us to pay attention to that demand and start making this as part of our offering. Um, the format right now is it's like a bus wrap except for the robot. So you get to the robot is really cute and looks really cool. So if you haven't seen it, you should look it up. But you get to really own that branding and the look of the vehicle. And obviously, again, you get a ton of attention. I think we had like a month-long campaign with a handful of robots that got more than 2 million eyes or something like that. So really powerful in that sense. And that's just folks locally seeing the robots. It doesn't incorporate the fact that every day there is some video of the robots that goes viral on TikTok or God knows where. We've also been on various TV shows. People would call me, it's like, you were on Jimmy Kimmel. I'm like, no, you probably confused my robot for something else. And then I look it up, I'm like, oh yeah, we were on Jimmy Kimmel. I had no idea.
That's amazing.
A quick break from one of our sponsors. Meet Market, your AI assistant for e-commerce marketing. Market isn't just another growth tool, it's a member of your team, helping you keep a pulse on your business and trained to save you time and make you money. It's also co-founded by James Barrow and myself. Visit us at withmarket.com. Now back to the podcast. You guys have spent a lot of time, and your team's done a tremendous job of humanizing your robot in particular.
That's right.
Making it something that people walking on the sidewalk kind of feel good about
Mm-hmm.
and can kind of accept and really enjoy kind of interacting with. And so how do you balance everything your design team has done and the intentional approach you've made in building the robot with ads that, in many people's mind have the potential to degrade the experience, right? We've seen it with Facebook, with Instagram, with Snap, other platforms where people start to complain that it's degrading their experience. And so how do you balance the two of those?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, in our case, obviously the ads never get into the way of the user using the product, which is the customer or the merchant. But I think, again, you look at the design of the robots, you'll find it quite unique. It was one of our advantages being born inside Postmates that we could actually invest in design. I actually called up someone I knew, a good friend of mine who I always wanted to work with for design, moved him from Barcelona back to Silicon Valley and said, let's go build robots together. And he kind of led that effort initially. And we created something really unique and iconic. And you don't want to ruin that in any way. So we have very high bar. When we work with brands, we want to make sure that they meet us where we are with the design of the robots. And I think we've been fairly successful with that. We've done some really cool ads on the robots that I think actually enrich the experience rather than take away from it. And as you said, at the end of the day, we cannot compromise on the bigger objective here, which is we need to make these robots accepted by society. They're so important. When you actually look at it, about like 500,000 people die every year because we choose to use our cars to go buy milk. 45% of car usage is for shopping and this kind of errands. You don't really need, as we like to say, you don't need a 2-ton car to move 2-pound burritos or even 2 bags of grocery. 2% of all emissions, CO2 emissions, are caused by robots, by cars using last mile transportation. We have to do this. This is too important to screw up. But part of that is we need to educate the public, and we need to make sure that every first interaction with a robot, every time you see a robot for the first time and it makes that first impression, is a positive one. So we definitely have a very high standard to make sure that the ads don't come in the way. I think they've never come in the way, and in fact, they can enrich if they're executed well.
Yeah, I definitely could see too how it is enriching. I mean, I think even for, I think just like as a a member of the public, like seeing a robot with a familiar brand to me even like makes it
That's right.
more, I think, like, yeah, it's interesting because I think, at Snapchat, one thing that we focused a lot on, then I think that we did a pretty good job, is there was augmented reality ads, which were basically called lenses, and people would play with them. And what we saw is that the best performing ads were the ones that people played with the
Mhm.
most, right? So we actually had a concept of playtime, and that meant basically like if the playtime was high, we knew that the ads were working well. And you could see here, just given how physical it is, like the more, yeah, just like I think it's so like captivating to see a robot, that the idea that you can marry like a really enriching format with such like interesting technology is pretty cool. Do you think over time you'll try to turn it into like a programmatic channel? Do you expect like you'll put screens on it and you'll do layers of targeting and kind of all that
Yeah,
stuff?
actually, the robot does have a screen already. Now, being a small team, you want to be very focused where you put your engineering efforts, and we have, bigger problem to solve right now, which is making robots at scale. But the plan is to eventually use that screen as well to bring, a digital experience. I think that would be both good for our economics as well as for advertisers who want to use the robots to create experiences, because it's not just about a robot that moves by you. These robots can do really cool things. They can, show up at a certain time, and there can be programs for pushing certain products. So to us, these robots are out there to make money, and whatever is the best way to monetize them is what we should be focusing on. Uh, of course, things that are scalable, but it turns out that these kind of campaigns are actually quite scalable.
And as far as targeting goes, like what targeting do you guys have the ability to do today, or kind of what are you excited about in the future to be able to reach the right people as the robot is on the move?
Yeah, so obviously, there's the robots are operating in fairly known geographies. The radius is usually a couple of miles. The hours of operation, the locations they go to. We've had folks reach out to us who want to advertise to restaurants. So of course we're going to every restaurant in the neighborhood. So in that sense, it can be very targeted. It's still fairly early days, especially when we introduce digital ads. I think that would be really interesting to work with. We are still learning. Again, we are building a team around this. I think as it evolves, there's going to be new ways of making it better and optimizing it further. I think as it is, it's already superior to a lot of OH advertising channels that there are out there, but I think we also have room to improve it.
For you guys, in terms of, I guess, like your geographic rollout, like do you expect that you'll expand to a bunch of different cities? And I ask primarily, again, if there's ever advertisers are listening right now, like are you looking for people that are still kind of Los Angeles focused? Maybe like entertainment industry would be a great fit. Any kind of just like kind of key type of opportunities you think that people should be aware of?
Yeah, we are expanding obviously in LA, but also outside of LA. This is publicly known. We have a contract with Uber to put 2,000 robots on their platform, so we can use these robots as fast as we can build them, and those 2,000 robots would be rolled out nationally. If I were to kind of manifest a vision, it would be to do some kind of I would say, a Super Bowl-esque ad where we take over the entire fleet across multiple regions and basically dedicate it to a certain brand that has something to share. I think that would be really, really cool, and it's the kind of partnership that I'm hoping we would do down the line. Right now, since we are more local, we are kind of still building the mechanics of it in LA.
And in terms of, do you guys have like public pricing you can share, like roughly speaking, if someone wanted to do a campaign, what does that look like?
A few different variables: the number of robots, the duration. So it would be something that we would discuss, with specific brands.
Does
Makes sense.
does the reach play a factor both in pricing but also in kind of post campaign measurement and reporting? Whether it's how many people kind of saw this ad that it went by. I imagine you guys have a much better ability to measure that than static billboard.
Yeah, we have certain capabilities in the robots that we haven't really fully tapped into, but could provide some interesting tools down the line. And then we have certain models that we can run, usually through partners, that would help us understand the kind of impressions that we had offline, basically in the physical world. And then the ones online are much easier to measure. You can look up the robots on TikTok and elsewhere very easily. So usually when something goes viral, everybody has seen it the next day.
If you if and when you're ever hiring for like product manager leaders for your ad team, let us know. As you're saying that, there's some people who've been working on auction dynamics of social networks who would be extremely interested in this problem set. There's some really amazing things you guys could do, just given that you have cameras. Yeah, it's going to be very cool. Um, and then, are you guys, for the time being, it's U.S. focused? Are there plans for international expansion, or to start with, it's all just U.S. for the time being?
We actually have done a pilot in Vancouver, Canada, which I guess there's a bit of bias. I'm from Vancouver, and we have a team in Vancouver as well. So Canada is very high on the list, and we also have a partner. Uber obviously is an international player with Uber Eats. In some markets like Japan, they own more than 50% of the market. And we also have Delivery Hero, which is one of the largest delivery platforms in Europe and Asia, which is just like Uber. They're also one of our investors, and we've been talking to them about expanding beyond the US. Obviously, again, we are still in early days, small team, kind of growing. So I think in the next couple of years, we would have more to share about that.
A lot of the companies you just mentioned, I think people are starting to realize that they all have very, very massive ads businesses, right? I think Uber in the past several years, I
Right.
mean, that was always expected, but the numbers now coming out are massive. Instacart, filed for their IPO, and their numbers came out, and people now realize, okay, this is an ads business. And so, you're partnering with a lot of these companies. And so, how do you go about thinking about building your own ads business versus maybe telling Uber, you already have an ads business that you're selling inventory for. Now just sell my inventory. We're already partners on the delivery side. Go sell my inventory.
Yeah, there's two competing things here. One is having control of your own destiny. So this is a big revenue opportunity for us, and you want to be careful not to be in a position where someone else ultimately controls that revenue source. But at the same time, I also don't like to build things that other people have built. Our job is to really find where we can uniquely add value. So these are the two competing priorities. Usually we solve this by having, if we are relying on somebody else, we want to have more than one partner we can rely on. So we have had some good success with partnering with folks in this area. At the same time, it's still early on that we've also considered doing some business development directly. This is, I think, one of those areas that whoever leads this effort inside Serve, the folks that we are looking for right now, would have a lot of influence on forming that direction. But we are still experimenting. I'll tell you guys a funny story. When we first wanted to do this, I had this idea of, hey, maybe we should put ads on the robots. And we were still inside Postmates. I went to the Postmates executive team. I'm like, guys, I had this idea. What do you think? Now, remember at the time, it was a Postmates brand. So I didn't really have control over that. We had to think about the bigger picture and got some pushback initially. They were like, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? Thankfully, they gave me a chance to go experiment with it. And it was so successful. It was with actually a very amazing brand in LA, Pink Dot, that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Mm-hmm. So they were the very first, a partner that we experimented with putting Pink Dot branded robots out there. And funny enough, within weeks, 7-Eleven, or actually within 1 week, 7-Eleven reached out to us, and that led to them investing in us once we spun out. So it was very successful from the beginning. But it seemed kind of crazy at first. So we are very experimental. We like to try things and learn, and it helps us being ahead of the curve. And right now, I think it's a combination of try things, but also try to learn from the industry that has so much experience in it. I'm a robotics nerd at the end of the day. This is not my background. I'm kind of learning, on the job. But hopefully, we will have people with that kind of experience to help guide us through the process.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when we talked about this a lot at Snapchat, which was like, when it comes to ad tech in particular, the strategy is almost best to just admit the fact that like there's no such thing as innovation in terms of like how the ad is actually served. Like that is a commodity, but the format is like where you can innovate. And so it's just looking at what you guys are doing. Like the format is probably the most like greenfield innovative space that you could probably have. I mean, it's like a fascinating opportunity. Anyone listening, go to their website, and it's serverobotics.com, and just think about all the different ads that could come out of this thing. It really is pretty remarkable. Very, very cool. In terms of, I guess, maybe like other use cases, do you see, and I know food delivery right now is really kind of like the focal point, but I mean, over time that this is really kind of anything that you could move from one place to another in the last mile context, this is applicable to. Is
That's
that a
right.
fair assumption?
Yeah, it is. Food delivery, it makes a ton of sense as a first application because we eat 3 times a day. It is time sensitive. It's one of the most expensive last mile deliveries that we've got because you can't really batch too many items together when you're doing the delivery. So it doesn't get the benefit of a lot of those optimizations. But we are not a food delivery company, we are a robotics company. This last mile movement of goods is incredibly fascinating and a place where the innovation gap is so big and we are so used to it that we don't even realize this. Just think about this. You order something from China right now, it costs $2 to get it to you. You order the same thing from Chinatown, it costs $8 to $10 to get it. It's upside down. And the reason for this is that 20 people in a massive cargo ship can do the work of about 100,000 British sailors a couple hundred years ago, like the entire British Navy. Those 20 people today do more, you move more goods than the entire British Navy did. But when you look at those 20 people in a USPS uniform, the increase in productivity is only 2x. It's like they're doing the work of 40 people from 100 years ago, which is pretty crazy. This is after we invented cars and GPS and AI and computers and 3G and 4G. All these things was created in the last 100 years, and we barely notice productivity gain in last mile. So what actually happens if we solve the last mile problem? I mean, no surprise we buy everything from China. Every 1% we reduce cost of delivery, commerce goes up by 5%. We are trying to reduce cost of last mile by 90%. And it's not just going to be food that's going to move around. It's going to be everything that gets to your house that could be coming through these robots one way or another. One of my favorite examples, by the way, is shoes. I bought this pair of climbing shoes for my daughter, and it turned out it was the wrong size. So we waited a week for it to come. Then we had to deal with the hassle of sending it back, wait another week for another one to come. We could have ordered it from a local store. It would have showed up in 1 or 2 hours in 3 sizes in a robot. You try them on, put the one that actually fits, keep the one that fits, put the other two in the robot, and it would go back. I mean, it's just a very different experience for everybody involved. I'm so excited about what can be done with these robots, probably things that we are not even able to think about right now.
Yeah, it's also just very cool that a lot of people obviously have a bad rap on ads, but like the fact that advertising can subsidize some of its costs, like you could really see where it has like a deflationary effect on a lot of cost of goods for people, like day to day. Like it really can create a lot of positives. It's really fascinating. Is it similar? The robot, like and obviously we're sort of Luddites when it comes to robotics, but similar kind of thing to what we kind of all see with what Elon Musk is doing with Tesla. You can update these over the air, and these robots will be in market for years and continue to get better and better through software. Is that how the system itself works?
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, every few weeks we have a software update that goes out to every robot. Every time a robot faces a new condition that it hasn't seen, that data gets uploaded. Our models get retrained. So the robots only get better as we go along. This is more like we've got iPhone 1 and there's like 15 more generations to go. So there's going to be a lot of improvements, but we've got the first one that works well.
A quick break from one of our sponsors. Meet Market, your AI assistant for e-commerce marketing. Market isn't just another growth tool, it's a member of your team, helping you keep a pulse on your business and trained to save you time and make you money. It's also co-founded by James Barrow and myself. Visit us at withmarket.com. Now back to the podcast. And so I think this is a good time maybe to transition. We have a few questions we just want to kind of fire off to you and get your takes on. I think the first is, we've talked a lot about how we've gotten to where we are today with on-demand delivery and last mile delivery. But what does it look like in the future? What does the next 5 to 10 years look like?
I think robots are going to enter our lives in public spaces, starting with doing deliveries, first food, but then everything else. it's going to start a period of transition for our urban environments, for how we live in our cities. We can kind of start to take spaces away from cars and do things in ways that are way more efficient, but also make these services that are just so convenient and useful way more accessible to folks in society who currently can't afford to pay $10 for extra $10 for a burrito.
And then how does advertising evolve alongside Serve Robotics, but also the market in general?
I'm pretty curious about the day when the advertising can more than cover the cost of last mile transportation, and what kind of opportunities that opens up. I don't think we have thought about all the possibilities of that. But again, imagining mom and pop shops that rely on last mile delivery, being able to offer something to them that really expands their reach, at the same time taking cars off the road, like it would reinforce this model. And I think there could be all sorts of new opportunities and applications for using these robots once you get the cost to effectively zero.
And more broadly, you having a PhD in robotics, what are you most excited about in the field of robotics?
I mean, I mentioned earlier, robots are really the incarnation of AI in the physical world. Um, this idea of that Jetson vision of the world finally becoming closer to reality. There's nothing that excites me more, but more broadly, bringing intelligence and scaling it up in our society, I think it's incredible. So we've seen what that looks like when we did it before with the engines and our muscles, but now we're doing it with our brains, and I think the world can always use more intelligence. So it's going to be really exciting to see how that transforms our society.
Given the fear, I think in society, just as AI has become a much broader topic, what is something you would say to people who are fearful of AI or fearful of robotics, and what that may mean for society?
I would say that I understand where that fear comes from. I hope that they spend a bit of time studying history, because we've had this exact reaction pretty much at every juncture in the past where something was about to have a significant impact. And it's turned out that every time we have taken that step and that leap, it's made our society better. Someone had calculated the cost of making a t-shirt 100 or a few hundred years ago, and it would have been like $50,000. There's a reason why people only had like one set of clothes. Now you can buy it online for $5. Like, there's a reason for that. So I know that in the short term these things can seem scary or painful, but we owe it to next generations, and we owe it to our society as a whole to not be scared and to actually confront whatever those fears are. Obviously be thoughtful, make sure that the robots are friendly, make sure they're thoughtful when they are introduced to public spaces. This is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. But at the end of the day, we got to remove those cars off the road. They're literally killing us. So I think you can't compromise there.
I mean, Ali, this has been a fascinating conversation. Something that we're used to focusing on ads, but getting into the field of robotics and how the two are kind of merging or blending together has been very cool to hear about. Where can listeners learn more about Serve, you, and is there anything you want to talk about?
Sure. I mean, on social, I'm on Twitter. So is Serve. I'm at Ali Kashani. I think Serve is Serve Robotics on Twitter, and then also on LinkedIn. So feel free to follow us there. I have to tell you, I never thought I would be on an advertising podcast when I started this, but this is really fun. This is really cool. I love when this path cross.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thank you for doing it, and I really do think it. Like, I mean, we spend a lot of time thinking about ads and how they work and how they can be positive, and also just how they can I think, like, become a net positive for small businesses in particular. And I can't think of like a more tangible positive use case than this, and also just the ability to scale with it. So it's really, really cool. So thank you very much for taking the time, and thank you for working on these problems. It's far more impactful than just ad tech alone. So humanity needs people like you doing this as we figure out the ad stuff.
Thanks, guys.
But
Really
thank you.
appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the platform.
Thanks, Ali.
Thanks again.
Before you go, we need your help. If you enjoyed this week's episode of Taking Inventory, then subscribe or rate wherever you listen to the podcast. And while you're at it, please share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode of Taking Inventory. See you then.